Throughout the pages of Scripture, the practice and language of lament was an integral part of the Israelites' everyday life and relationship with God. As they faced up to their troubles, the children of God frequently lamented about a whole host of national, political, social, religious, and personal disasters before God in ways that were honest, urgent, and bold. By directly and persistently using the four-part formula for lament we introduced in Session 1, turning to God, permission to protest and complain, boldly crying out help, and daring to trust and hope in God, the Israelites believed that God would not only hear and respond to their cries, but keep His promises to save them and restore their hope. But what about us? When the circumstances of our lives create dark clouds, what or who do we turn to? Do we turn to our friends, our family, or a trusted professional for help and advice? Do we turn on the TV, go shopping, listen to music, exercise, get creative, or find something else we enjoy doing to help us escape our pain? In our day of trouble, we all turn somewhere to help ourselves cope. Outside of those coping mechanisms I've just mentioned though, I wonder, where does God fit into the mix? Do we turn to Him like David in Psalm 13? Or Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane? Or do we allow our confusion, exhaustion and disappointment to cause us to retreat from and ignore the one who knows our pains and sorrows and is best equipped to help us? To help us consider how we can take the first steps in our lament journey and turn to God. We're going to spend the second Daring to Hope session exploring Asaph's words in Psalm 77. Birthed during an anguished, sleep-deprived night, Psalm 77 is filled with honest struggle, tough questions, deep personal turmoil, and confused emotions as Asaph experiences a crisis of faith brought about by his perception that God had abandoned him in his pain. Whilst at times we might find ourselves feeling a little uncomfortable at Asaph's brutal honesty within this psalm, his words are the perfect example of the connection between lament and the first step in our formula for lament, turning to God. In fact, Asaph's cry is a beautiful and biblically grounded demonstration that if we want to learn to lament, then we must resolve to keep pushing our hearts towards God in our day of trouble and keep talking to Him in prayer. Listen to how Asaph turns to God as he begins his lament. I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. I remembered you, God, and I groaned. I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. Though Asaph is in a great deal of distress as he begins his psalm, he is not silent. Turning to God, Asaph cries out to Him in prayer amid his suffering and struggles. This first movement might sound basic, obvious even, but it is hugely important for us to remember as we embark on our Daring to Hope journey that turning to God in prayer must always be our starting point when we lament. When the circumstances of our lives create dark clouds that perhaps leave us feeling like God doesn't care, or God has abandoned me, or God isn't good, the ability to turn to God and cry out with our protests or questions like, "How long, O Lord?" represents a significant act of faith. Whether offered in boldness or weariness, this faith-filled act of turning to God sees us not only cling to the relationship forged between us and God, but also reminds God of His responsibility to remain faithful to His covenant promises to provide us with help, hope, and grace in our time of need. And as we will see later in this session and the others to follow, such prayerful lament of turning to God and opening our hearts and lives to Him as we lay bare our struggles, questions and turmoil in prayer is infinitely better for us than giving God the silent treatment.